Disclaimer: I am just a humble Genshin Impact fan. I do not own any of the rights to Genshin Impact, or any of the content within it, such as the lore books. Those specifically belong to Hoyoverse. What I do have, however, are friends with things like learning disabilities, such as dyslexia and ADHD, or very little free time, making reading the lore books either in-game or on wiki pages hard for them. Our solution to these problems has been for me to make these recordings so that they can listen to them and still get to enjoy Genshin lore like the rest of us. I have chosen to upload these recordings to YouTube as a way of sharing them with other fans within the community who might be in similar situations. I am admittedly no voice actress, trained narrator, or video editor, but I have tried my best, so please be gentle with me. Therefore, without further ado, let's get into today's story. Robben vs. Chesterton, Iridescent Brooch. An entertaining novel quite popular in Fontaine. It tells a story about the thief, phantom gentleman, Phantomas Robben, and the famous detective Chesterton's first confrontation. Disclaimer: this is a work of fiction. Any similarities to persons living or dead or actual events is purely coincidental. Volume 1. Found behind Vitruvia in the Fleuve Cendre. Call me Poirot. Some years ago, never mind how long precisely, having little or no mora in my purse and nothing particular to interest me outside of the city, I travelled to the court of Fontaine and entered the care of my uncle Chesterton, the famous private detective. To my surprise, he immediately tasked me with assisting him in tracing Robben, the mysterious phantom thief. The court should not be so deserted at midnight, and yet at this point in time there was nary a person to be seen on the streets outside of Mr. Pierre's mansion. Only the autumn night wind echoed beneath the cold moon like a lamenting harp. In the shadows, the police and journalists watched the well-lit mansion a stone's throw away like hawks waiting for the arrival of a certain esteemed guest. Like everyone else involved, I too was hidden in the shadow of a street corner. The long wait was beginning to bore me. This is taking too long. Will Robben really show up? The lady journalist from the Steambird seemed to hold a different opinion about this matter, and rebutted me immediately. Of course he will! He sent a message ahead, claiming that he shall steal that iridescent starstone brooch. He's not going to go back on his word. The only question really is what sort of cool method he'll use to arrive at the scene this time. You seem to be... Of course I am. It would be more surprising for someone not to be enamored with the phantom thief. And just as the journalist was excitedly regaling me with tales of this rogue's great deeds, the clock struck midnight exactly. Suddenly, there was a great explosion, and the mansion lights died all at once. Before we could adapt to the sudden darkness, a great light blazed forth from the mansion window, rendering the night day for a few moments. Having recovered their sight, the police filed in, and I trailed after, stepping into Mr. Pierre's collection room. There was nothing on the dais. The iridescent starstone brooch was gone. Both the roars of rage and cries of dismay seemed washed out and meaningless in the face of this obvious truth. The hubbub of the crowd and the remnant sounds of the explosion formed a cacophonic mix that made my head hurt. There was nothing for me to do, so as my uncle instructed, I pretended to investigate the scene before returning home. Before I left, I heard the sound of a shutter behind me, and the lady journalist's most unprofessional gushing. The legendary phantom thief Robben makes yet another extravagant exit. A wonderful performance indeed. Volume 2. Sold by Hubel at the court of Fontaine. Luckily, the crime scene was not far from my uncle's house, and I dragged my exhausted self back there. He did not react to my return, instead continuing to read at his usual spot, just as always. I imagine that the Steambird's headline tomorrow will be quite a riot. You don't seem worried at all. I hung my coat up, unfastened my collar button, and sank into a comfy spot on the sofa before giving him all the details of the incident. The explosion was not intended to destroy anything within the mansion, but to cover up a different part of the phantom thief's plan. He was hiding the sound of a clockwork mecha's movements underneath the loud sounds of the explosion. A clockwork mecha? He'd be hard-pressed to escape with something that large, so it must have been ditched somewhere nearby. And we may yet find some clues of it. It seems that this Robben is not as clever as claimed. Methinks we shall close the net around him soon. That is no certain thing. Just as the explosion was only used to hide the sound of the clockwork mecha, the mecha itself could also be little more than bait. This is so complicated. I ran my hands through my messy hair. And what about the brooch? It's still in the mansion. My uncle paused for a second. All these tricks point to a single goal, convincing everyone that the brooch is already gone. No one could ever imagine now that the stolen item is actually still on site. After that, all he needs to do is fabricate some identity that will grant him access to the mansion, in which case he can swipe the brooch without raising any alarms. Volume 3. Sold by Hubel at the court of Fontaine. I see. What a cunning fellow. My uncle stared at me with obvious interest, as if waiting for me to continue. Seeing that, I took a deep breath and started explaining my deductions. As you said, when you have eliminated the impossible, whatever remains, however improbable, must be the truth. So with your hypothesis in mind, everyone at the scene could be guilty, and in the worst case, everyone could be involved. Robben the Phantom Thief may in fact be a group rather than a person. I recalled everyone back there, trying to remember every trivial suspicious thing. Mrs. LeBlanc from the Steamboat is definitely an admirer of Robben. Well, I did examine her journalistic credentials, but forging identification papers should be easy for him. Mr. Chandler from the Maison Gardiennage left the scene for a time and did not return till the theft had already happened. He was incredibly infuriated, but on further consideration, that might also have been an act. Madame Christie from the Maréchaussée Phantom has been stressing to everyone the possibility of Robben using a clockwork mecha. Considering your hypothesis, this could in fact be a deliberate red herring. Well, who do you think? Amongst all these people, who is the most likely to be the culprit? Having evaluated everyone for the possibility of guilt, I asked my uncle this question with much care. You have keen eyes indeed. My uncle put his pipe down and stood up, his steel cane glinting coolly in the moonlight. However, you've missed something most vital to the case. I was stunned for a moment. He raised the cane. You, the gentleman who came to see the uncle he has never met, claiming to be Poiret, were in the crowd back then too. Am I not right, Mr. Robben? Other information. Completing this book series awards the achievement Robben vs. Chesterton that is part of the Mortal Travails Series 4 collection. The book's cover says Detective in the Fontaine script. The narrator, who was tasked by his detective uncle to assist him in investigating Robben, shares his name with an in-game detective assistant, Poiret, who is currently incarcerated in the Fortress of Mirapede for attempting an unofficial investigation into the Fontaine Research Institute. There is an obscure reference to Phantomus Robben in the Archon quest Tracing the Footsteps of the Past part of the Song of the Welcome Moon, Act 7, A Traveller on a Winter's Night. In Step 9, the option Sandrone is looking for is a novel entitled Great Detective Herlock, the Alchemist and the Clockwork Saint, which contains a scene where Herlock interrupts his assistant with, "Stop right there! That's Phanto something mass Rob something story. We don't have the publishing rights from their publisher." The opening of Volume 1 matches the opening of Herman Melville's Moby Dick, almost word for word. Call me Poiret. Some years ago, never mind how long precisely, having little or no more in my purse and nothing particular to interest me outside of the city, I travelled to the court of Fontaine and entered the care of my uncle Chesterton, the famous private detective. Call me Ishmael. Some years ago, never mind how long precisely, having little or no money in my purse and nothing particular to interest me on shore, I thought I would sail about a little and see the watery part of the world. Volume 3 references a number of famous crime writers as potential suspects. Madame Christie equals English crime queen Agatha Christie. The narrator's name is also likely a reference to her Belgian detective Hercule Poirot. Mrs. LeBlanc equals French novelist Maurice Leblanc. Mr. Chandler equals British-American detective fiction writer Raymond Chandler. Other names. Sources. If you made it this far, thank you so much for watching. Ad Astra Abyssosque.